This is a bluff. By continuing to bluff and confusing Veldanava's judgment, it seemed that this would be the foothold to victory. That's what I thought, but it seems that was too naive. My goodness, the singularity is more troublesome than I thought. Veldanava said this, looking at me with emotionless eyes. Then he pushed me away with his sword. I didn't resist the current and just jumped back. I prepared myself, but there was no follow-up attack. It seems you don't know what despair is. In that case, I'll teach you. Then I'll listen to your final argument and see if you can continue spouting sweet jokes like you've been saying up until now. Veldanava wasn't going to let himself get caught up in my pace, and instead revealed his own hand in an attempt to seize the initiative. I had a really bad feeling. Veldanava raised his hand towards the sky, and countless balls of light appeared. A dazzling arrow of fire that seemed to fill the entire sky. No matter how you look at it, it was magic. You've got to be kidding me. How can you use magic when time has stopped? I was surprised at first, but when I thought about it, it made sense. After all, Ramiris had also used magic on Benimaru. I wasn't able to observe it closely, but it was undoubtedly healing magic. If Ramiris could do it, it was only natural that Veldanava could too. Just as I was thinking about this, Guy told me. It's primitive magic. It's pure power that has no relation to the concept of time. There's no concept of time either. Is this some kind of law manipulation that can be used anywhere? It doesn't seem to consume any energy, so it's an extremely cowardly power. By the way, even the current me would find it impossible to do something on that scale. Even with Ramiris's help, now in her adult form, it's impossible for her to negate a magic that fills the heavens. I thought that was probably the case, so I wasn't too upset. Burning forth primordial flame. Veldanava's magic was being constructed. Although the current situation would have been enough, the number continued to increase. Although no time passed, I was able to recognize the effect until it manifested, so it seems that even primitive magic cannot ignore the rule that the movement speed of information elements is constant. This is reassuring, but it does not lead to victory. I'm just feeling excited and excited. Your comrades and acquaintances who have gathered here will all be burned by my flames. Velzard may be protecting them, but she cannot block the power of this flame. Veldanava's plan was to make me despair. Stop it. If you do that, I will never forgive you. I calmed my mind and told him calmly. Although he intended to fight to the end, he still searched for a way to reconcile. He was Milim's father, a close friend of Guy and the others, and the creator of this world. It would be difficult to destroy such a being, so I hoped that he would acknowledge my victory and then have a change of heart. However, there is a problem. If they're going to lay hands on something important to me, I can't afford to be so leisurely. I have no choice but to use all the means at my disposal and go to the very end so that they can't even try anything unnecessary. If words didn't work, the only option left was violence. Even after hearing my advice, Veldanava's expression didn't change. And then, mercilessly, he shook his hand down. Conclusively, the negotiations broke down. Arrows of flame shining in the sky are each fired at their target. Despair surged in my heart, and immediately afterwards, in the midst of the stop time, my thoughts accelerated even further. The flaming arrows are aimed at those gathered in this place. If they were all fired at once, everyone would disappear without being able to do anything. A despairing future awaits, in which all but those who can cope with the time stop will die. King Gazelle, Yaumu, Hinata, and the members of the Holy Knights and Crusaders, Leon and his subordinates, the heroes belonging to the Free Association, soldiers from the Empire, and even the Titans who had been there. Enemies until just a short while ago. There are many other close friends as well. My companions, led by Gabuta and friends like Karian and Frey, and even Yuuki. And the others, who are a bit shady but hard to hate. All the important people I've met since being reborn into this world will meet there. And equally. Is this something I can never forgive? I thought. It's no good to just try your best and then give up if it doesn't work. If that happens, everyone will die. All possibilities will be lost, and everything that has been cultivated up until now will come to nothing. Without it being passed down to future generations, all meaning in human life is lost, and all great achievements become worthless. That is unacceptable and must not be done. When I was reincarnated into this world, I wanted to be free from all ties and live freely. I was surprised to find out that it was a slime, but as long as it's alive, there are many things to enjoy. I thought it would be fine to live as I pleased and die irresponsibly. However, when he met Riguru and the others, he found himself making friends. Everyone relied on me, and I felt a sense of responsibility. If someone relies on me, I'll do my best. I could no longer be irresponsible. The connections and bonds I had with everyone kept me alive. Because I found meaning in life. I have a dream, and every day is fun. If I hadn't been connected to anyone, I would have left this world long ago. That is why I am grateful to this world. It must be protected. What a relief. It was truly a relief. To entrust the fate of this world to a careless person like me. But if they rely on me, I have to do my best. That's how I live my life, and it's the same now. I've made up my mind. No, I was prepared from the beginning. I turned my attention to the flaming arrows filling the sky. Recognition is possible. So I came up with a solution. What worries me is whether I, who has no soul and only an ego, can do it. For Master, nothing is impossible. I felt like I heard Seal's voice say that. It was. There was no time to worry anymore. I had no choice but to do it. Besides, to begin with, Seal-san is also a being without a soul. And yet, he was able to freely control his powers. If that's the case, there's no way I can't do it. Since I was able to use slime-specific skills, I should be able to do something this time too. No, that's not it. Something has to be done. To that end, fiery arrows rained down from the sky. The next moment, all of the flaming arrows disappeared. Yes, it was a success. Veldanava had a surprised look on his face. I was worried myself, but now that I've had such success, I've decided to just accept it as a given. Veldanava had created flaming arrows using primitive magic, but I was able to perceive them all, and my soul devourer is an authority that allows me to instantly devour everything that I can perceive. In other words, as long as it was within the range that the information particles could recognize, it was theoretically possible to deal with it, whether it was primitive magic or an unknown power. In reality, there was no way to know what kind of attacks he would be able to withstand without trying them out. The truth was that all he could do was hope that they would work. It was my first time handling it without Seal, so I was extremely anxious and nervous, but it was a success, so it's no problem. Since I can perceive the entire battlefield, attacks like this one can be neutralized, no matter how many times they are repeated. To put it a little exaggeratedly, primitive magic doesn't work on me. So this was a big moment. It's useless. Emission-type techniques don't work on me. With that said, I took a step towards Veldanava. Still, though, ignoring the warnings to stop, Veldanava activated primitive magic. For me, this act was an act of violence that crossed the final line. I'll never forgive him again, I thought, furious. Not towards Veldanava, but towards myself. Benimaru almost died because he hesitated. And he remains in a coma to this day. But even so, I was still confused. As a result, he ended up putting his friends in danger. Although they were able to overcome the situation safely in the end, one wrong move could have resulted in casualties among their teammates. This was undoubtedly a mistake on my part, due to poor judgment. No matter what the other party's circumstances were, it was none of our business. Even if he was feeling sympathy, he should have done so when he had the time. If the other party is not going to take us into consideration, there is no need for us to unilaterally accept their demands. Furthermore, if they are going to destroy us for their own selfish reasons, then my answer is to resist with all my might. What does it matter if the other person is a god? If someone tries to take away our dreams and hopes, then they are our enemy. Defeat the enemy. That was all. I will defeat you. I'm going to kill you, I declared again. What? Veldanava started to say that, but there was no way he would let him finish the sentence. I approached Veldanava using instantaneous movement teleport and slashed upward with all my might with the sword I was holding in my left hand. Veldanava hastily responded. Although he blocked my sword, his balance was thrown off. That moment was exactly what I was aiming for. He clenched his right fist and slammed it into Veldanava's defenseless face. Veldanava was blown away and came to a halt after crashing into the wall of Tensukaku. As I watched, I suddenly felt like my mind had become clear. It feels like all my worries have been cleared up. I had thought I had to punch him at least once, and I achieved that goal. Next, let's aim for complete victory. You're not the only one who feels sorry for me. I walked up to Veldanava and told him. These words could come back to haunt us. Those who have never experienced pain should not say these words to those who are hurting. Even I wouldn't be able to stay calm if something happened to one of my friends. However, if Veldanava is trying to drag the world into his tragedy, I have no choice but to say something. I can't say for sure that I won't become like you, but what good will it do to talk about such a future? Now is the time. If you lose the present, you lose the future. I have no intention of saying nice things like I understand your sadness. It'll just sound like a lie anyway. Comfort from someone who cannot share the same pain will never truly reach your heart. This is because people have no choice but to recover from grief on their own. All others can do is to be there for them, and if they are heading down the wrong path after a tragedy, to try to correct them. That's why I'm telling you. In return, I will reject with all my might the foolishness of what you are trying to do. I don't care if you're a god or whatever. I will oppose you with all my heart and soul. The winner will decide which claim is correct. Either way, if we don't win, it's over, so there's no point in worrying about what happens later. I feel like my eyes have been opened up. All I had to do was stick to my own sense of justice. Make me laugh, Veldanava said this as he slowly stood up. It doesn't seem like a punch would do much damage. I put all my strength into gripping my beloved sword, which I named Hope. Elpis. Then, I feel as if I can sense a powerful heartbeat, and my energy surges. Veldanava also readied his sword. Unlike before, it seemed like he seriously recognized me as an enemy. I should be honored, but it seems the difficulty of the mission has increased, giving me a headache. This is no time to complain, so I stop worrying and slash away with my sword. Veldanava didn't dodge. He didn't even block it with his sword, but let it go straight through me. As a result, it hit me right on the shoulder. It felt like I was hitting a block of iron with a wooden sword. My hand felt numb, but I think this was because my strength was being deflected back. Moreover, after finishing his attack, Veldanava's sword was swung down on me, leaving me defenseless. I hurriedly turned back into a slime. Perhaps because this was an emergency, it went very smoothly. Thanks to that, They managed to avoid it just in time. I rolled away from Veldanava and transformed into my subtle state once again. He then readied his sword and pondered the current attack and defense. It felt hard, but that was due to the multiple barriers. The problem was that it felt like my skills were sealed. But wait a minute. In the first place, the current sword technique does not have any magical effects added to it, so it is merely in a simple state like fighting spirit sword or aura. Sword. It would be difficult to block a combined technique using a barrier or similar, but a simple technique could be completely blocked. The same was true for Yuuki's ability sealant skill, but it was only natural. That Veldanava could use it. This meant that in the suspended world, where magic could not be used, he could not use techniques such as Storm Black Magic Slash or Storm Break, which combined magic and sword techniques, so he had no choice but to clad and wrap his fighting spirit and aura, but that level of technique and arts was no use against Veldanava's barrier. In other words, there's nothing we can do. No, it's too early to give up. There's also the primitive magic that Ramiris used, so if we can analyze that. But that's impossible. If Seal were here, she would have been happy to analyze it without me having to ask, and it would have already been put to use. Unfortunately, she's not here now, so I can't rely on her. In that case, I have no choice but to do my best on my own, and the only thing I can do is... That's right. Suddenly, an idea occurred to me. Come to think of it, there was collapse of nothingness. When he was treating Benimaru, he had even managed to perform the risky feat of converting the negative energy of nothingness into positive energy. This time, he was planning to wrap that nothingness around his sword and hit it with it. It seems like the skill would be nullified on its own, but this void isn't an authority. It just utilizes the energy of the natural world, which is a bit different since it doesn't exist in nature. It seemed like there was a good chance it would work. Not only that, there's also the easy-to-use Soul Devourer. I linked this with the sword too, and it worked. Maybe it's because I named it that I feel as though the sword and I have become one, so I thought it might be an interesting way to use it by concentrating it on the blade and activating Soul Devouring. This was exactly what I was aiming for. It looks like I'll be able to achieve the desired effect. The enemy's energy is eliminated by wrapping the sword in nothingness. The energy that was lost is then absorbed by me using Soul Devourer. Even if it wasn't possible with one hit, if I continued to thrust my sword at him, I felt like I could break through any defense. Isn't Veldanava no exception? Well, rather than worry about it, I decided to try it first. Having made that decision, I attacked Veldanava with my sword. Then, something surprising happened. The barrier was cut through with ease. Even Veldanava seemed surprised by this. What did you just do? I was surprised too, but I answered calmly so as not to let him know. I cut him. That was a stupid question. There's no way I would give a serious answer to the enemy. I had no intention of teaching him, but when he brushed it off so easily, being the contrarian that I am, I wanted to teach him. It's a new technique. I'll name it Hollow Co Eat Breathe Collapse How. Sword can I think. I just tried it on a whim, but it was a huge success. Even so, it has incredible power. This is the basic form, and it seems that it can be further developed. It looks like it can be incorporated into my special technique, so I might be able to use it in the battle against Veldanava. What's more important is that I was able to break through Veldanava's multiple barriers and ability-killing sealant skill. This proved that my attacks would also work, so I could see my chances of winning. With the prospect of defeating Veldanava now in sight, I grinned broadly. Ime. Veldanava was confused. It was unexpected that Rimuru, a character who never existed in the past, would become the biggest obstacle. They had declared it to be a maximum singularity, but it seems to have been something even more terrifying. It had been a long time since he had been hit, and it was also the first time he had ever been injured in a frontal fight. Even during his fight with Guy, he didn't remember having any particular difficulties. Moreover, it was completely impossible for him to be cornered to this extent. But that's different now. The more Veldonava felt a sense of crisis towards Rimuru, the more things were not going as he had hoped. Even as he fights, Rimuru grows stronger and stronger. It seemed that he was trying to figure out how to fight through actual combat, and the more experience he gained, the more his skills improved. What truly surprised me was the moment my primitive magic was nullified. In order to completely break their spirits and crush their will to fight, he tried to eliminate everyone who had gathered in this place, including Rimuru's companions. The only people who have value to Veldonava are those who are connected to him. In the past, he would have thought that all life was precious, but now it has become an emotion he cannot understand. Therefore, he had no hesitation or reluctance to destroy even the heroes who were trying to protect this world. He intended to burn them all to ashes without any restraint or mercy. And yet, Rimuru managed to block it. This fact meant that Rimuru possessed abilities on a par with Veldonava. It's not that he was underestimating them from the start, but he was absolutely confident that he wouldn't lose. But now, even Veldonava was in a situation where he couldn't be sure of victory. However, that is also to be expected. It could also be said that it was a pleasant surprise. This was because even Veldonava was unsure whether his actions were correct or not. Maintaining the world is hard. If we do not give people desire, there will be no development. If we do not allow people to die, the world will become filled with decadence and begin to walk the path to destruction. The end of all the superhumans who found themselves with too much free time on their hands was tragic. It would have been better to provide a natural enemy to create a moderate level of tension. However, this action ended up spreading misery throughout the world. People die. As a result, the fear of separation has become a constant haunt. If they live out their natural lifespan, we can send them off with a smile, but few are so lucky. Some died before they could achieve their dreams, while others had their lives taken away unjustly. However, if we don't set a lifespan, the world will become stagnant. In the end, they decided to create a system called Rinrin Mawani 1010. Seisho to manage the world. People live with the aim of creating a better world. By overcoming numerous misfortunes, we can sharpen, examine, study, and refine our souls and pass them on to the next generation. He bet on the will hidden in the human heart, the strength to survive. Those who attain enlightenment in this way will reach the promised place. However, an unexpected misfortune threw everything into disarray. Veldonava's wife, Lucia, was also meant to be that person. And yet, after he was killed by the assassination blade and never returned, Veldonava began to doubt his own beliefs. Should the world be destroyed? Or should we just keep watching as we have done until now? I don't know the answer. That's why he took the gamble. Standing before Veldonava was none other than Rimuru, who was now before his very eyes. The battle with Rimuru was becoming more intense. Rimuru had become someone that even Veldonava could not predict. The combined defense of multiple barriers and ability-blocking anti-skill, which could respond to any attack, was cut through by Rimuru's sword. He named them Holokoit Kukalapsu Swordken, but it seems that this technique was also something he came up with during his battle with Veldonava. That is, if you take his words at face value, but since there was no reason to doubt it seemed to be the truth. And so, Rimuru's abnormality is being proven. It was strange that he could move even without a soul, but even Veldanava saw Rimuru as an unreasonable existence. The only thing that comes to mind is the Manas. Manas, an information life-form digital nature that has undergone a unique evolution. It is an entity in which an ego has emerged from a collection of information particles, and it does not have its own soul, meaning that it cannot maintain its existence unless it coexists with a host by parasitizing it. However, its influence is enormous. It is capable of interfering with information particles and possesses tremendous computing power. By making full use of it, it becomes easier to rewrite the laws that govern events. And the efficiency of using numerous powers can be maximized. In other words, it means that magic and skills can be controlled at will. If he is in existence on the same level as such a wisdom core manas, it is not hard to understand why Rimuru's growth rate is abnormal. If he were to hold back and fail, it could lead to Rimuru becoming even stronger. It didn't seem like a good idea to give him any more room to grow, or so Veldanava decided. Veldanava thought further. What is the best course of action against Rimuru, who has obtained a blade that can reach him? The ideal situation would be to kill him in one hit, but there are few options for doing so. Still, it was something that should have been done. The answer to whether you are right or wrong lies at the end of the story. If that is the case, then we should do our best. The most powerful attack method among my powers is Dragon Star Explosion. Flame Ha Drago Nova, but it probably won't work. Rimuru had even been hit by primitive magic, so he would likely swallow up even Dragon Star Explosion Flame. Not only was he unharmed even when Milim fired it repeatedly, but there were also records of him being unharmed even when he was hit directly. Though the power and range may differ, the principle is the same. Even if Veldanava had fired it was predicted that the result would be the same. In that case, only the forbidden technique remains. I only intended to use this when creating a new world. It was a trump card in case of emergency. Heaven and earth destruction ruin initialize heaven. It is a technique for initializing and reconstructing the world. When Veldanava created the base world, he used the ultimate God's art, beginning Eden. By using this secret technique, Veldanava lost his void collapse and was no longer omniscient and omnipotent. On top of that, he succeeded in descending into the world he had created. Since he was now unable to use God art technique, the next strongest divine skill that Veldanava could use was initialize heaven, which was the runner-up. This would have meant that the entire world, including Rimuru, would be destroyed. However, it is unexpected to use it now. This is because initialize heaven cannot select people. He will not be able to take his friends with him to the next world that will be reconstructed. Besides, he had not yet finished collecting his beloved Lucia's factors. Ivalage is half of Veldanava and will likely survive even after going through initialize heaven, but she will still be far from being a complete Lucia. If he had the lost void collapse, he would have been able to absorb all the worlds and extract all the information, but this was a technology that Veldanava currently had no ability to pull off. If the worlds were to disappear, Lucia's information child would also be lost. For this reason, even Veldanava had a difficult decision to make, whether or not to use heaven and earth destruction ruin, initialize heaven. However, there is no need to think too hard about it. Although she may be imperfect, Lucia is still Lucia. If Veldanava wins, it will mean that it was the right choice. The new world will be better than the current one. He intended to create a more perfect world together with those who reached the promised land. His younger siblings, Velzard and the others, were also dragon species, so they would likely be reborn in the new world if they were treated so that their memories would not be carried over. They would surely cherish Veldanava as before. Even his daughter Milim will be reborn again. This time I'm not alone, so I won't feel lonely. Even the world building could have been done better, since it was the second time around. If Rimuru is defeated, that future will come true. Rather than failing in pursuit of the ideal, it is better to choose the best. And so the scales tipped. It seems I have no choice but to accept you. It was Rimuru who destroyed this entire world with the power of God. Veldanava decided to reset the world. That is unacceptable. Yeah, that's going too far. Someone interrupted us. In a world where time has stopped, Veldanava sinks into a sea of thoughts. Veldanava was confused. This was because he was being spoken to directly at his core heart, which is God. Who on earth could possibly do something like that? Could it be Lucia? No, that's not true. Lucia is me. The answer was in the voice in my heart. And there were two of them. And one of them claims to be Lucia. Even Veldanava was shaken by this shocking turn of events. I wondered what it was when I saw the soul I had stolen from Rimuru shining. That's where the voice came from. Master is an all-powerful person, but with me around, he seemed unable to fully believe in his own achievements. Therefore, after much hardship, I have made the difficult decision to use you. Someone explained it to me like this. Who are you? I am Seal the Manas, the wisdom core, who exists for the supreme Rimuru. Sama. It was interesting that he was considered supreme, putting himself aside. Veldanava thought. Before that, it is incomprehensible that the divine wisdom core Manas can be so emotional and act so freely. If we believe his words, the person who called himself Seal said that he had used Veldanava. In other words, that meant that he had purposely separated himself from Rimuru. Even if you believe that you are the wisdom core Manas, are you saying that you thought Rimuru would win without you? Veldanava asked that question. The Mana's divine wisdom core is specialized in calculation ability. Its existence is top secret and only known to a select few, but it is extremely useful for activating skills and magic. Even Veldanava found it hard to believe that this Manas would abandon his role as his master's advisor. However, Seal answered calmly. Even without my assistance, Master's win rate was 100%, so there's no problem. Besides, I had another important goal. Seal said that this was a move that was made precisely because she was confident that Rimuru would win, as evidenced by the current results. That was quite a bit of confidence in front of the god Veldanava. However, since the current situation was such that it looked like that was going to happen, Veldanava had mixed feelings. Ignoring Veldanava, Seal complained. Even so, Master is a real problem. He has no room for carelessness, exposing himself like that. It was a story that had nothing to do with the battle. Rimuru had changed from his beautiful girl appearance to that of an adult man. But Seal was not happy about this. She had never expected him to act like this, and it was completely outside of her calculations. But on the other hand, I also felt relieved. Seal was worried about Rimuru. Although he is invincible, he is completely unaware of it. When asked for help, he cannot refuse and faces the pressure with only a sense of responsibility. Rimuru is such a kind-hearted and lovable person. This time, too, he is probably feeling anxious inside, but putting on a strong front in front of his friends. And perhaps she was sad that Seal was gone. As Seal's master, Rimuru has no limits and is omnipotent and the strongest. That was what Seal wanted to teach Rimuru. Even so, it was a miscalculation that Rimuru would imitate the appearance of Third, Mai, Jo, Kami, Satoru, and Satoru. Seal was confident that she could read everything through, but Rimuru was not as easy to deal with as she had hoped, easily exceeds expectations. This time, it was carried out in an unpleasant way. Fortunately, the battlefield is in chaos. Master has not yet been seen, so let's have him return quickly and return to his original state. Seal lamented that her insignificant mistake of misreading Rimuru's movements and not caring about Veldonava, the strongest being, was a huge blunder. On the contrary, she declared that she would return to Rimuru's side as if it was a matter of course. Seal's attitude was enough to make even Veldonava shudder. What on earth is this? Is there a fatal bug in the world I created that has given birth to such an incomprehensible being? If the master is a master, then the servant is also a servant. Seal's reasoning was too disturbing to be dismissed as mere bluffing. I was also curious about his other purpose. It was probably something related to Lucia. Rather than questioning Seal, he decided to confirm it first. This is no time to worry about bugs. What's more important is Lucia. The most important thing to Veldonava was not someone like Seal, whose true identity was unknown. The being who called herself Lucia was far more important and of interest. Are you really Lucia? Veldonava asked, not at Seal, but at another presence. The nostalgic atmosphere makes you convinced that it is the real thing. There is no doubt about it. Yes, that's right. Seal here gathered the fragments of my soul and restored me. The Lucia Veldonava had been looking for was none other than herself. The person who deserves this honor is Seal. I reluctantly possessed you in order to recreate her. It was a difficult decision, Seal said. He looked really unhappy and wanted to return to Rimuru right away. Seal combined the many elements that had gathered around Rimuru, as well as the Lucia factors that Veldonava had collected and succeeded in recreating. Lucia. The heart is a fickle thing, and even the missing soul and authority reside in it. Moving from place to place, it was precisely because the true essence of skills was born from the desires of people that such a phenomenon occurred. Seal spent a long time deciphering it and uncovering the truth. Shizue Izawa, Hinata Sakaguchi, Chloe Ober, and several others had fragments of Lucia's genes scattered throughout them. They had all been collected through Rimuru and then integrated by Seal. And now, Lucia's soul separates from Rimuru's. It's finally finished. There are still some missing elements, so it's not perfect, but the match rate is over 99%. Veldonava's sword memory was also reading Lucia's memories. Since her heart is genuine, and her personality and memories have been recreated, there is no other way than to declare that she is the real Lucia. Lucia, really. Velda, I'm sorry I made you sad because I wasn't there. Most important thing to Veldonava was to bring Lucia, whom he loved with all his heart, back to life. That was all. Even though she no longer had a physical body, Lucia was an almost complete soul and had Yellow Knight Spring Sea Return returned. The goal seemed to have been achieved. Veldonava was overwhelmed with emotion. However, happiness does not last long. Kyaha, the dragon of destruction, has not yet been destroyed. Chapter 5, Creation Myth. Let's go back in time a little. With the help of Sauka and his subordinates, Moss, and others who were suited to gathering information, Saoi had grasped every corner of the battlefield. This information will be compiled and delivered to Benimaru. Based on this, accurate analysis and judgment were made, and appropriate instructions were sent to each department. This paved the way to victory. However, this was overturned by the harassment that Veldonava committed. Jahil, Cornu, and Vega, these three were summoned by Veldonava and inhabited the bodies of Swim, Habitaki, and Keikashi, who were supposed to have been defeated, creating a threat that surpassed even the true dragons. What should we do? We have no choice but to withdraw our main forces and let them deal with the situation. If it comes down to it, I'll step in. I understand. I'll help you then. Sauak and Benimaru finished the meeting very easily. Afterwards, Benimaru's orders were given to once again direct the military forces. The main warriors left from each side and began to fight against these three evil gods. This caused some people to struggle, but no one complained. Rather, it only increased their enthusiasm, and the battlefield became even more heated. In fact, on the battlefield, Mizari and Rain, who had inherited the sanctuary secret technique from Ruminas, were constantly casting recovery magic. Therefore, it was very stable. The holy purification barrier, holy field, is still in good condition. The cryptids, the mystical beast tribe that had descended from the Tensukkaku and appeared one after another, were caught up in the battle between Ivalage and Milim and had all disappeared. Therefore, a plan was currently underway to wipe out the remaining cryptid forces. On the ground, victory was within reach. However, if you let your guard down, the situation on the battlefield can be reversed in an instant. This was because even the weakest cryptids possessed combat abilities comparable to those of the demon lords, posing an overwhelming threat to the heroes who had gathered here. The reality was that they had barely succeeded in defeating them one by one. Thanks to the use of holy purification barrier, holy field, and tactical cooperation. Still, things are somehow working out, proving that Benimaru's decision was correct. We'll also risk our lives to hold on, so please win. HMPH, don't say such nice things. If you don't come back alive, your wife will be angry with you. It was a conversation between Calgurio and Minutes, who had effectively become the top players in the East. After seeing off Emperor Masyuki as he set out for battle, they were commanding the soldiers while cracking jokes. This lifted their spirits and helped to ease their anxieties. To the south, there are white-winged eagles. Demonic rulers such as Veyron, Zonda, Khan, and Misora are still alive and well. Victory to the heroes. Queen Mayu of Farminas, also known as Mulan, prayed, and the holy purification barrier, holy field, began to shine brighter. As if watched over by that radiance, the heroes led by Yaomu also gave it their all. In the west, Sale, Gregory, and Glenda are in command. You're kidding me, right? In a situation like this, I wish you wouldn't force such an important role on me, a traitor. Don't say that, Sale. If we put our all into this and do our best, we'll be recognized. By God again, right? Well, that's certainly true. This land is filled with Ruminas Sama's love, so running away is not an option. Yes, that's right. All we have to do is pray to God with an empty heart and slaughter our enemies. Unlike those two simple-minded people, Glenda is realistic. How foolish, if you die it's all over. And even before that, deserting in the face of the enemy is unforgivable, even if you die. Or rather, it wasn't Rumina's love that filled him right now. I think it was meant as encouragement from the demons to work hard and not slack off, but Glenda wasn't rude enough to say so. Besides, this battlefield is under Saui's supervision. Whether to run away or not is a question that goes beyond the choice. Well, I guess I'll let you dream. And so Glenda showed a kindness that was unusual for her. In the north, Adalman and Gadra were fighting with all their might. Thanks to this, they have a huge advantage. Some of the cryptids, mythical beasts, are resistant to magic, but they are exterminated without any hesitation. Let's keep this up and finish this quickly. That's right, we must hurry and help in other areas. Their success here had almost secured their dominance, but... And then time stopped. Jahil was defeated by Yuuki, but the pain of endless death suddenly disappeared. By some means or another, the soul was called back to the world and took up residence in Swim's corpse. Similarly, Cornu resided in Habataki, and Vega was fused with Kakashi. Jahil remembers the fear of death. Therefore, the thirst for life is never satisfied. That eternal pain, filled with despair, had completely disappeared. When that happens, all I remember is my resentment towards Yuuki. Yuuki's attack, crazy for death-lost entropy, completely annihilated even his soul, and yet, for some reason, he retained all of his memories and grudges. I won't forgive you. I'll forgive you, Yuki. Jahil shouted. It was also an act of inspiring his mind, as if to escape the fear of death. Standing before Jahil are warriors who have a connection with him. It seems you've chosen me. With a wry smile, Yuuki stood in front of Jahil. Naturally, behind Yuuki were Laplace, Kagali, Tia, and even Mai, standing by as support personnel. There are other people who are familiar with Jahil. Oh dear, is that going to happen again? Oh, if Leon can take care of it by himself, I won't have to do anything reckless. Well, I completely agree with the opinion that I'm already tired of it, but I'd like you to show some manliness and attitude here. Turn down. Despite being teased by Elmesia and Sylvia, Leon is determined to fight Jahil too. The end. Joining the battle were Ultima and Karara. Honestly, maybe just me is enough. Isn't that what I should be saying? You should stay quietly on the sidelines and not get in the way. And what? Are you up for it? They still get along well. Ultima and Karara glared at each other, their hostility towards each other clearly visible, as if they had no regard for Jahil. Seeing the two of them like that, the others held their heads in their hands, but also felt hopeful. Cornu didn't even understand why he had died. The last thing he remembers is a desperate pain and the approaching flames. Only after reviving like this did he realize that it was Velgrind's attack. Don't mess with me, Velgrinduwu. Cornu roared. That unrestrained yell alone was enough to create shock waves. Even a demonic beast of the Demon Lord class would not be left with even a speck of dust if hit by it. But, however, it was easily cut down with a single sword. Shut up, you just woke up and you're in a bad mood. Well, whatever, I'm going to kill you. Don't go calling my beloved Grun by his first name. The one who said this was Rudra, who had the earth god Diva in his hands. Rudra had intended to face Jahil, but now that things had turned out, that was a different story. He held Velgrind around the waist and had a fearless smile on his face. Incidentally, within Rudra, Yuki's consciousness was still alive and well. Oh no, I'll probably end up bedridden again with things like soul-deep pain. Sore. But well, it's better than dying, Yuki thought, cheering himself on. Rudra and the others were not the only ones standing before Cornu. Carrion, Midley, and Frey are watching. His old friends Zalario, Obra, and even Feldway were there. Since Feldway is there, Diablo is naturally there too. For the Cornu of old, this would have been excessive force. However, now Cornu has changed so much that he seems like a completely different person. The outcome of the battle was still unknown. Vega resided in the cliff, but he had changed even more than Jahil and Cornu. Lonely. And then fear. In the empty space, where there was no one around, Vega truly understood these things. It is a miracle that I am still alive. His indelible ego remembered the memory of his own ruin in the distant future. Oh, I made it back, ha ha ha. I did it, God didn't abandon me. A surge of joy filled Vega. Seeing Vega like that, the beautiful White Queen, Testarossa, sneered. Oh, I heard that you were completely wiped out by Diablo and his men, but you managed to survive. Testarossa said this while looking down at Vega as if appraising him. Hinata stood next to Testarossa and coldly declared, People don't like persistent men, you know. Vega had escaped from the royal capital of Ingratia. This time, the two beauties looked determined not to let him get away. Standing alongside these two was Shin. I'll have to punish that foolish guy. My body is warmed up and I'm feeling better. So I think I'll be able to fight at full power soon. Gabuta and Ranga were the ones who shivered at this. Shin-san was causing a big commotion just now, right? Gapta, even my memory is not wrong in that recognition. Shindono was certainly unrivaled. Isn't that right? Yes. Gabble joined the conversation, nodding vigorously. That's right. I don't think Shindono was dissatisfied. If it was Shin, it seemed possible, Gabble thought. Gabuta and Ranga were the same, and felt a sense of awe towards Shin. At this point, those who remained unfazed stepped forward. Hush, there's no problem. All we have to do is defeat the enemy. That's right, let's show our might. With Gerudo and Kumara's words as the signal, the battle with Vega began. The three resurrected, Jahil, Cornu, and Vega, were fighting in their own unique ways. Jahil, who had been fixated on Yuuki, the man responsible for his death, quickly changed his target. Or rather, because Ultima and Carrera had launched a fierce attack, it was no longer possible to ignore it. Not bad. Please entertain me more and more. By being given slime cells by Rimuru, or rather by being forced to accept them. After begging for them, Ultima and Carrera had gained new powers. The body that was already familiar to him had become even more perfect. A body that would not break even if he used his original power, no matter how powerful the magical power, it would not be a burden on his new body. Not only that, but he even had a high resistance and affinity to the extremely dangerous nothingness. There was no risk, and he could use forbidden techniques and spells as much as he wanted. There was no way they could lose in their current state. This was the common view shared by the two of them. Looks like I won't have a role to play here. It seems like even I won't have a chance to shine. It was a pleasant surprise this time, but that aside, I'm worried about the future. Exactly.